Hey, what's up, and welcome to Q&A, the show where I take your questions from the internet, YouTube, and everywhere in between and answer them here in video format. A ton of questions coming in after another loss from the Cleveland Browns. We're going to start with a question from JS, who says, hey, Q, do you think these past couple of performances by our defense is enough of an eye-opening for Andrew Berry to address our defensive tackle issues or more heavily this offseason? I will say if this doesn't open the eyes, I don't know what will. This could just be a long-term thing. Some years is going to be worse than others. That's probably what I think it's going to be, because I think it was at that point last year. I know I certainly was trying to point this out. But also, I don't know. Well, I will say this. The Browns do have limited resources, sure, but they have the resources that they need to be able to get things done at that position, right? The second, third, fourth, and fifth round, you can get good defensive tackles in those rounds. D tackle is not necessarily a first round position anyways, right? You have all the first round talent theoretically already signed on this team, right? Denzel Ward and Myles Garrett. So he has the opportunity to change this. We'll see. We'll see, man. This has been the whole regime where they have put duct tape solutions together for the last 3 years, and I think now it's finally kind of biting them in the ass. So, it's unfortunate it's happening right now, but this has been something that has been looming for a while now, right? People have been telling you the sky is going to fall when it comes to this defensive tackle room for about 3 years. Now the sky's falling. I don't think anybody should be surprised at this point. The next question comes from Home-Based Homes, who says this. Hey, Q, my question is, do you think the problems on defense lie squarely on Joe Woods or our personnel, weak interior defensive line, and linebacker player, or a combination of both? Whenever something goes wrong with a team, right, or a team loses a game, we have this tendency to want to finger point at one thing and say, that's the problem right there. If we get rid of that, we're fine. Because that's a very comforting notion. What's not comforting is often the truth. When things go wrong, it's usually because a lot of things are going wrong at the same time. There is no coincidence, right? After 3 weeks of us blaming the secondary for the defensive woes and saying this is on the secondary and they're the miscommunication, if they just get that right, it's going to be fine. And then the secondary finally gets the communication down and we still have issues defensively. And the reality, what it feels like is you plug one hole and you fill another and then one burst open. But the reality is there were more holes there to begin with that we just weren't seeing because one was such a problem. I think it's true that Joe Woods is not good at his job. I also think it's true that the personnel is playing at a very low level. I think they both suck right now. That's not comforting. That's not something we're going to turn this around and be top 5 like last year. No, I don't think that. I think the time for turning it around and becoming a good unit is over with. Now it's just about being serviceable. But they both stink. I can't sit here and tell you in good faith that the personnel is good when they don't tackle. I can't sit here and tell you in good faith that the coaching is good when something's always wrong with the defense. They both stink. Matt Millner with the next question. Hey, Q, since Dion Jones' trade came out in the blue hours of game day, do you think they view this trade as more of a practical fix to the defense, especially with the impact of Anthony Walker being out? This is what they did with Dion Jones when they traded for him in the middle of the day on Sunday is the equivalent of when you realize you have a leak going on with one of your pipes and you need to go to Walmart real quick. right? Like there's no, oh, well, I'll just patch this up and fix it tomorrow. Like, nah, man, if that thing keeps leaking overnight, dog, we gonna have a flooded bathroom. This is what that is, right? Which is Andrew Berry needed to go to Walmart at 2:00 in the morning. That's what needed to happen, right? He looked at the tape, saw what the Mike linebacker position had become in 2 weeks, and said, I need to go to Walmart and get a new one. Like no messing around. You just need it. You don't know if the new one's gonna be good. You don't know if the new one's gonna be upgrade or you're fairly certain it's gonna be upgrade because it's gonna work, right? Like the middle linebacking position, the Mike linebacker position, just was not working the last 2 weeks. It just was not working. It was broken. He traded for Dion Jones because they needed a new one, and they don't have a new one on the roster. Taki looked terrible at Mike in the preseason, and so does Jacob Phillips. So this is the equivalent of Andrew Berry going to Walmart at 2 a.m. to buy a new faucet, because there is no duct tape solution on the roster that you could just use real quick to hold you over for a week. This is broken. That's what I think that was. If we put it in more like relatable terms, I guess. Shane with the next question says, I want Joe Woods gone, but I also realize it's a risky move mid-season. What are your thoughts on bringing in a guy like Wade Phillips or Mike Zimmer or Vic Fangio in as an assistant coach on defense for this year and letting them change the reins? So I don't think Wade Phillips or Vic Fangio is a realistic possibility, because I don't think Andrew Berry is interested in switching out personnel again. Right, if you switch to a 3-4, you're going to have to switch out personnel again. You don't have the resources to do so. You're really only going to consider people who are going to run a similar 4-3 system. The 3-4, you just don't got the resources right now to switch. You really don't, because you had to get rid of so many players and bring in so many players, and you just have limited resources right now. So that's out the window. Mike Zimmer could work, but I don't know how that would work. If Mike Zimmer and Kevin Stefanski are fine with it, and Kevin's the one asking to bring in Mike Zimmer, then that's one thing. If it's Jimmy asking Kevin to bring in Mike Zimmer, I wouldn't bring in Mike Zimmer under those circumstances. That's going to get me fired, right? And I don't know if Mike Zimmer's necessarily the right guy. I think we get so attached to name value when it comes to players like Ndamukong Suh or coaches like Mike Zimmer that we don't evaluate why these guys are not in the league anymore. I don't really care if I know the name of the next Browns defensive coordinator. I do care that we have a new one by the start of next season, though. I'm not going to sit here and fixate on who that should be or what name I want it to be, because ultimately you can get somebody I've never heard of to be the defensive coordinator and they can be fine. They could be really good. I mean, look at DeMeco Ryans out there in San Francisco, right? Nobody was talking about him before he got that job, but now he's one of the best ones out there. I would rather have a fresh face, up-and-coming fresh face that can be a new voice, a more relatable voice, and hopefully a more aggressive philosophy defensively. I think that's what this room needs. I don't think we need a specific name. I think we're getting too caught up in the name conversation of this. And I get it, because you can't really have a conversation if you're not talking about who you want or what names you want, and you can't have a conversation about somebody you don't know. But keep that in mind when they do look for the new defensive coordinator. And I do assume that's going to be at least in the offseason this year. That be open to guys you've never heard of before, because they might end up being the best choice. Dominic with the next question, who says, hey, Q, I know AB won't trade or cut his draft picks, but due to him already giving up on Jacob Phillips, do you think this could also be happen to Cade York due to his lack of accuracy? If this continues, can you see or explain Dion Jones' IR situation? So, yeah, Dion Jones is on the IR, but like that seems like it was just kind of a mutual agreement between him and the Falcons to just let him rest, because there was no plans for him to play a significant time this year. So I think he'll be ready to play if they need him to play. Now let's talk about AB, and will he get rid of Cade York if Cade York continues this? That's a tricky situation, man, because you can only miss so many fourth quarter critical kicks before people start to question whether you have what it takes to make those kicks, right? Like, it's one thing if he's just missing random field goals throughout the game, but I mean, this is the second fourth quarter kick that he's kind of had lemon booty on, and that's a little bit concerning, right? Like, I don't know if you can be patient with that. And if that continues, like, I don't know how many more misses he can have in that moment, especially when you missed the field goal already. Like, he definitely needs to shake back. He definitely needs to straighten out and just like have a string of good games. But yeah, like I always say this, and it's true. You are 3 noteworthy bad kicks away from being out the NFL. Any kicker is 3 from being removed from their team, other than Justin Tucker, who's 4, right? He can miss 4. He ain't never going to miss 2, but he can miss 4, and then he might get cut. But every kicker in the NFL, other than Justin Tucker, who I don't classify as a kicker, I call him, he's Justin Tucker. He's special. But every kicker in the NFL is like 3 kicks away from being fired. And, and then you have tremendous security, but unless you're somebody special, that's what the reality is. All right, Julian says, is Jacoby really as good as under pressure as we all think he is? All 3 of our losses ended with him throwing an interception in crunch time. Thanks, Q. Yeah, I used to think he had a bit of a rep as sneaky clutch. He can make some plays happen in some moments, but he's really not played well in those situations. Now, one of those interceptions against the Jets, I don't really blame against him, but those other 2 are concerning, right? Those are 2 bad interceptions that he threw that you just can't really justify the read there. And that is very, very concerning. It was concerning when Baker did it. It's concerning when he does it. And if DeSean does it, that would be just disastrous, right? But I don't anticipate it happening for DeSean. But yeah, that's a concerning thing. I also will say this, though. We're only talking about those interceptions because we're asking entirely too much out of Jacoby Brissette. We really are. Jacoby Brissette is not meant to be this important for this offense. In this team overall, the defense was supposed to be very good. The special teams were supposed to be very good. And right now, both of those units have let him down. The only thing that has not let him down is his run game and his offensive line and the wide receivers. But everything else has let this dude down. So, yeah, it's concerning. But also, let's be real here. We have asked far more out of Jacoby Brissette than what was initially supposed to be the case. So, anything else that we get from him is a result of us asking way, way too much from him. And I think last week was an example of that, and the week before. Every week that we have to rely on Jacoby Brissette to move this offense to get to like 30 points, it's going to blow up in our faces because he is a car that is not, he's a car with a donut on it, right? That's what Jacoby Brissette is. He's a car with a donut on it. If you go 40 in the street, you are fine. But the second you ask that car with the donut on it to go 80 on the interstate, wobbly. It's going to get wobbly, right? We are asking too much out of him. That is what Jacoby Brissette is right now. I really feel that way. But thank you for the question, Julian. Next question comes from Amari, not Cooper, who says, hey, Q, what do you think of the Browns record will be by the time Watson comes back, since we are losing the teams we shouldn't? I think they could win next week. They could win the next. Like, I want to caution Browns fans because things just are happening so randomly right now in the league, and honestly are just so, everybody's kind of average right now. So the Browns could come out these next 4 games and they could be 4-2. 4 weeks, my bad. 4-2, or they could be 3-3. Like they could be a number of different records. I think it's really week by week, game by game. I think they have a chance to have 5 or 6 wins that they need when Watson comes back to be a competitive team. But I also think it's very possible that they don't win another game until he comes back. So, there is that too. So every win's coveted. I still think it's between 3 to 5 right now. Thank you for the question. The next question comes from Dick Grayson, who says, Although Watson is an upgrade over Brissette, given that the offense has been playing very well, what type of upgrade are we really looking at with Watson? All right. I don't think people understand the difference that having not just a good quarterback, but a respected quarterback as far as defensive perspective comes and on the football field goes with Watson. And that is, Nick Chubb would probably be averaging like 6 yards a carry if Watson had been playing this whole time, right? Because he wouldn't be seeing stack boxes. The offense is already good, but you could tell that they need these long drives to score. They can't really score in quick bursts, right? We worry about this team when it's under 5 minutes at the end of a half, right? We really do worry about this offense because they can't move the ball fast. And they rely on the run game too much, right? And that kills clock. So I think they would be a more aggressive offense, and they would be able to overcome more of the defensive flaws that this team has if they had a more explosive offense, which they would have if Watson were in here. So also, I think it's very possible you're probably at least, what are they right now? 2-3. You would be at least 3-2. I would say 4-1. I would say 4-1 because you definitely win Carolina. Week 2, who do we play? You beat the Jets maybe because that wasn't on the offense. So I still think there's a chance you lose that game, but you'll win the rest of these games, right? You'll win the rest of these games. So you'll be at least 4-1. Whether that Jets meltdown happens with him or not, whether it's even at that point with him in there, that's a whole nother conversation. But we wouldn't be playing these close games with some of these teams with DeSean Watson, right? It would be 14, 15-point leads, and we would be pretty comfortable because, the defense is not great. They do still have the capability to get off the field every once in a while, and that would be enough with the way this offense is playing to really have beaten a lot of these other teams. So I think that's really the difference. And the fourth quarter would be the main difference, offensively at least. But that's it for this week's Q&A. Thank you guys for asking these questions. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night.